Incoming transmission in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Outcasted OC. Today we have a very special podcast here for you guys. We have a pop culture episode and we're talking about, of course, Star Wars, because in pop culture on this channel, whatever, what else do we talk about? It's literally always Star Wars. And we've got two amazing guests on the channel this week. We have a returning Liam, aka OP1. He was here for the Ahsoka chat way back, like episode 3. It feels like a lifetime ago. And always a great chat to have him on. And we have got today Darth Veritas, aka James. What's going on, dude? Always great to see you. Love your channel, love your content, dude. And obviously, I've got Ross next to me. Hi, Ross. No, I'm joking.
Hello.
The amazing Ross. Good. Yeah. Right. So we're talking Ahsoka. We're talking the finale, but I want to talk about the show in general. The most obvious question that I'm thinking of is, what do we all think of it? What are the thoughts?
Do you want to make a start, Liam?
No, because who wants to start?
Yeah. I mean, trying not to be biased. She is my favorite character as Ahsoka, so I've put all of that behind. But yeah, like easy 10 out of 10 for me. Like it just hit the spots. There was a couple of episodes in there that I thought was a little like not so much slow, but I thought, okay, I know that you're building for something, but where, how? And it was kind of struggling to see it in some cases, but it pays off because when you do see the episode, you understand why. So fantastic, amazing, can't beat it.
Fairs. You, Liam, what about you, dude?
Yeah, I remember coming on here and we had so many questions and we're like, oh, what does that mean? And who's this person? And what's all that? And as Jim said there, a lot of it either peered off or just became like Marok, for example, just became like obsolete and didn't really matter. And we had so many theories about Marok. Like I was convinced, but great in that sense. I love that it didn't leave anything open that wasn't meant to be left open. Really happy with the story, how it was put together overall. I still stand by it was a little bit too long. It either should have been a movie. So I've got kind of 3 options, and we discussed this a few weeks ago, but either should have been a movie, should have been a lot trimmer, so maybe 6 episodes just to chop out a few bits, or they should have just not called it Ahsoka and they should have had a more generic name, because I feel and this is true of Kenobi and Boba Fett, whenever you put a character's name on a title, it puts a lot of pressure on that character to have a really good series. The series was brilliant. Ahsoka as a character was probably wasn't even the top 3 characters for me, but I feel that's only an issue because it had her name on the board. But look, it was brilliant. I'd say I'm just nitpicking there, and yeah, I'm not I'm excited for it.
No, you bring up an interesting point there. I'll come back to that in a minute before I get Ross's opinion, but I do want to just comment on that after Ross has said his piece.
I'm pretty much the same as Liam there, where for me it was great for what it did, but there were parts that seemed it did drag an unnecessary bit, and the downfall of Marek really upset me, because I was I want the theories to come true. I want it to be some cool Sith. I want some introductions there. Find something out, especially because the armor he was wearing, I was this gives me kind of Jedi Knight vibes. Could be someone Old Republic that's become a Sith member and things like that. I really wanted interesting takes on that. And then just to kind of have it be oh, it's the witches, the sisters' magic. I was okay, that's really cool that you're showing us this, but there could have been better ways you could have done a Sith character other than being, hey, here's a spirit energy. That's just me, though. Everything else I thought was super polished. The main takeaway for me that I absolutely loved was them showing off bits of the Clone Wars that even Anakin didn't know, and that conversation between Ahsoka and Anakin made the whole show for me. Just the Siege of Mandalore and just being I don't remember this battle, and Ahsoka having to talk about how she did become a soldier in that time period and she had to carry on. His actions, I thought, was incredible.
Beautiful scene. Yeah, that's another thing that I do want to come back to when we talk about a little bit more in depth of the show. Liam, just go back to your point, dude. If you're not going to name it Ahsoka, I was going to say like maybe Heir to the Empire would be a good name, seeing as they're going on similar.
That would be
kind of role of it.
It would be risky.
It would be risky. It would be risky, but like the names, it's right there. Like it's literally what they're trying to tell the story of. Like Thrawn is trying to take back power in the known galaxy, trying to reassemble the Imperial forces. It's there. I don't know how else you would name it, but it is a good point to name it Ahsoka, and then to really, I mean, no offense to Ahsoka, but she was really not the star of this show for me. It was probably it was a mix of like Balin or Thrawn, and a special shout out to David Tennant, who did the voice of Hugh Young. Like, absolutely fantastic job of like bringing that character again to life after doing it in the Clone Wars show. Like, so good, man. He never fails to like amaze me how he can like change from one type of character to another. David Tennant, whether that be in live action, just over voiceover, in animation, he's always so good at it. I think it's a shame that we lost Ray Stevenson. Bless. Because I'm assuming they're gonna have to recast that character. I don't know what you guys think about that. Because that was such an interesting storyline that was going down the road of what Balin was looking for in the unknown galaxy. The fact that he's probably found another gate to the world between worlds. Something was calling to him. What was it that was calling to him? There's so much potential for that character, and it's unfortunate that Ray never got to see it. But Thrawn, we've got to talk about Thrawn. Just
before we do, Rhys, because I'd be interested to get you. We discussed this a couple of weeks ago about, it was a hot topic, like how do you continue Balin's story? Do you recast him, and like who do you recast him with, and how do you justify that? Do you tell his story off screen and then you basically use the on-screen characters to narrate tell us what happened? Do you do comic book / novel and continue his story that way, and then the on-screen characters pick up his story with his kind of demise or something,
So I'm glad you brought this up, because I was thinking about this like ever since obviously I found out that Ray sadly passed away before the show, and it became more prominent in the show week by week, more interesting, especially by the end of the show. I was thinking, how are they gonna, if they're not gonna kill Balin off, how are they gonna do this? And it's I don't know who they would recast him as. First of all, I've no idea. Like, off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone, because he fit that role perfectly. He did so well with it. So the best way I would say, maybe bring out some novels, maybe some comic books, maybe even like something along those lines. I mean, Veritas, I'd actually throw that question to you, to be honest, because you're so good at telling like the lore of Star Wars in the universe in your videos. Are like, I love that you tell like the timeline of all the characters when you get asked in the comments, like, how would you book Balin like for the rest of his span in the Star Wars? I said it's a wrestling show, but
personally, as much as I would love it to be a novel, because I feel like novels can really get your imagination working, I feel that it would do him a lot more service as a comic, only because Ahsoka has been so visual to us. Like, when we see it's all right reading about a brand new galaxy and a brand new world, but you want to see that. And it's all right, reading, oh, he's standing on the arm of the Father. I want to see that. I don't want to read it. I don't want to imagine it. So when it comes to so much visual that they've thrown at us, I feel like it is probably more appropriate to not recast. I feel like it's not so much disrespectful to Ray. I think it's just more of a homage to how good he was at playing this character, that if you just leave it as him, have if they are going to do season 2 of Ahsoka, have the comic fill this gap, and then season 2 is going to be, I don't know, for example, a year's time jump. I think that's probably what's going to work more appropriate, because whatever it is that Balin is finding, I don't know how you're going to kill this character off, but I've always envisioned that maybe whatever he finds is more of a sacrificial trait. So he somehow dies, Shin hears about it, and she's carrying on the narrative of, okay, so here's what happened to Balin, and Shin's going to carry on what Balin would have been doing had he have been alive. That's the only thing I can sort of connect there. But honestly, I think a comic's probably best. I think a lot more people prefer to read comics over books. It's just visually great. I don't blame you. So yeah, comic. I would definitely go with the graphic novel, a very detailed one, and we can all hear Ray Stevenson's voices in our heads when we're seeing him on a comic book panel. So I think that could work pretty well.
I like that. I like that. Ross, you're into your comics and stuff. Like, would you be down for that? Would you be down for a Balin comic?
I'd be down for it if it wasn't like a full paperback thing. I'd love like an anthology series, like a long-winded story length of it, like even past kind of like Ahsoka, like do it as a tie-in, but also leave it open-ended so more comics could happen with the character. But my actual takeaway from this and how I would personally want this kind of story to go, everyone was saying obviously how he's standing on the hands of the father and something is still calling out to him. Me being as I am with David, like how Dave Filoni is and how he's been wanting to basically finish the story he was already speaking about the Mortis gods. What's not to say Abeloth is the one that's calling Balin?
You never know. Like,
and then that becomes the sacrificial side of it. We don't see Balin sacrifice himself to Abeloth because of the character being dead, but that's how we get that kind of, nice finish of the book and finishing of his story is he sacrificed his ideas and his ideology to Abeloth, who was calling out to him to help her. Because I feel like that's kind of where they were going with this. It's on the area where the statues are, the light was shining there, and it's an energy he isn't as scared of, but he can sense it has a strong power behind it.
Yeah,
so that gives me so much Abeloth vibes.
He literally says as well, doesn't he? Like it's calling to him.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so that's where my idea would be. You have kind of like a little bit of the episode. You see, kind of just you don't need to like CGI him in or anything. You just have like a back shot of him speaking to Abeloth or something, and then Abeloth comes, makes its presence known, and that's where they finish that.
Okay, yeah. Like that'd be a brave way to go down, like storyline wise. That is a very brave. That's the equivalent of bringing Starkiller into the Star Wars like universe. Like power wise.
I feel like with Dave Filoni and how he already brought the Mortis gods into it with Clone Wars, he's bold enough to do it.
Yeah. Funnily enough, James and I are quite smiling here because we had this conversation several weeks ago, and I know of Abeloth, but as I said last time, I'm not really into legends. And I'd asked that question, and it was James's comparison was it's essentially the same as bringing Starkiller in, because of the level of OP. And the problem, so they're not going to do a diluted version for the same reason they're not going to do Starkiller. And that's something I've really pondered and absolutely makes sense to me. And I've personally moved away from, not that I was all in on or even anything in on Abeloth. I was like, well, what is Abeloth? And I kind of knew who the character was without anything behind them. But yeah, I've personally kind of moved away from that. I'm still sold it's Zepho for so many reasons. Like every time I think about it, I come back to Zepho, a rogue Zepho that they're all trying to get away from because Thrawn's even terrified of them.
I
would love it to be Zepho. Another one because they've already been mentioned, so it's supposed to technically canon now. In Andor is I would love it to be the like some remnants of the Rakatans as well. I think that'd be dope. Like the Rakatan Empire was mentioned in Andor when what was his name? What is the old guy's name? Left my head now.
Skarsgård.
Is that like yeah? He gave Andor the piece of Kyber. Yeah, and like he mentioned the Rakatans. I was like, oh wow, okay. Like I didn't expect that. So it could be them. It could be the Zepho. I would be happy with either or, to be honest with you. So it will be interesting to see how and if they're going to continue Balin's story. But speaking of stories, I wanted to talk about Shin. And like you said, like a lot of stuff was wrapped up in this show for me. I thought Shin was a bit of a loose end because Balin told her to go back to the Empire because her ambition is leading her in a different direction. She isn't going with Balin. She's just kind of there at the end of the show, and it's like when I saw that she didn't reach back, she didn't get back to the Chimera when she didn't go with Balin, and then she showed up and like obviously it was like with a lightsaber. Like I was like, oh, you're here. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, because I thought by the end of the show there was gonna be some kind of I won't say redemption arc for her, but like a conclusion for a first season for Shin. Like maybe she would go to Ahsoka, maybe like reconsider and go to Ahsoka, or anything. I wasn't expecting just the Shin's hearing also on this planet still, and she was left behind. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you guys any like initial thoughts on that?
I feel that if you were to have Shin be all, oh yeah, I'm good, by the way, it would be very rushed at that stage. Where it came to Ahsoka reaching out and she runs away, that felt very appropriate to someone, because if she just said yes, or she comes back the next episode, this would already talk to a character that is already thinking about going back to the light, is already thinking about leaving Balin behind. And we had none of that throughout all of those episodes. We see her to be a very loyal and capable apprentice to Balin. So there's nothing of indication there that says that she'd just easily sway over. So if I did see that by the final episode, I personally just would have thought you were really trying to make sure this person was going to be good for a reason, and it shows. I think her rejecting, so to speak, Ahsoka is more conflict and disillusionment can set in, that we don't fully know to the extent of how much Balin has been teaching her. We know that she's a Bokken Jedi. Well, not a Bokken Jedi, but trained as one, but trained without the weaknesses, according to Balin. So we don't know the extent of his training and what he's been telling her. So for all we know, Balin could have been said, oh yeah, these guys are horrible. They beat me up, whatever. He could be saying the most horrible things ever. And then Shin is experiencing this for herself of kindness. And it, to me, tells me that she's probably never even seen kindness before. And it's quite strange to experience that for the first time. So rather than just attacking, it's running away because there's conflict. I'm scared. I don't know how to process that. That's a brand new thing. I run. So she does. And now it's forging her own path. And I believe the actress did say this in an interview about how where some people don't see themselves as the villain, if you're playing a villain, they don't ever see themselves as a villain. But she was seeking more of identity, more of a path to take. So that's where it's concluded for me with her at this stage, that I might not completely agree with what Balin's doing. I might not completely 100% be set on accepting Ahsoka's offer, but I'm good right here for now, and I'll see where this goes. And I think it's just going to go from there.
Yeah, I thought she, like, speaking of like character depth and like what you say, she's very loyal to Balin. I thought she had quite a lot of underlining like characteristics throughout the show. If you really paid attention to her, I love the fact that she's loyal to Balin, but at the same time, she seemingly doesn't like it when people are a bit shady and break the word. Like when it was Thrawn who said, I'll keep my end of the bargain. You can go and find Ezra. And then when she found out that obviously Thrawn was sending her and Balin after Sabine and Ezra, she seemed to have a bit of a problem with that. It's quite obvious that she doesn't like the witches. She doesn't trust them. And I think it's not just because of her that she feels like her and a master are being used as like pawns, basically, in this massive, bigger thing that's going on. Because I think, like, I might be looking too much into this, but when she's asking what's in it for us, like, when Balin's talking about power and stuff, she's looking out for them, like, as like, that's probably like her father figure. It's like you've just said then, Veritas, like she doesn't seem to like she's been exposed to many different kinds of people who showed a kindness, or like the different parts of the galaxy. It's only really ever been Balin that's been like guiding her through her life. So she's looking out not just for her but for him as well. So I quite like what they did with Shin, and like at the end of this show, she's like one of the most interesting characters that's coming out of it for me.
Just to add to the point as well, I also saw it as kind of she was rejecting the ideology of Ahsoka, because what you've got to take away from it is how Balin said he liked the idea of when Order 66 happened and the Empire and everything like that. He liked the idea, but he didn't like the truth to it. So what's not to say he's told Shin what the truth was, all the darkness that was around it, and what Balin's ideology was there about Jedis is already drilled into Shin. So she's seen a Jedi show mercy in that kind of moment when they've fought prior and nearly killed each other prior. So she's like, 1 minute I'm your enemy, 1 minute I'm your ally that you want to take pity on me. So she's rejecting the ideology, is how I saw it as well. Of I have my own belief that I'm going to now run and take with me. And I think she's going to start teaching that to, the hunters that were all with her.
Yeah.
I feel like she'll start teaching the group of hunters and start setting them up as like her own small work group as well.
Okay, I like that. Liam, any thoughts on that?
It was a funny one with Shin because it didn't feel time for her character to just break away from Balin like that. And it didn't feel like the end of a series for her. She was probably the most open-ended of anyone. Felt like we would just start to ask questions of her. And I did wonder for a brief period if it was like a reshoot following, like it was a pivot on the back of Rhea's death to be like how can we use who we've got? I don't think there was enough time for it to be that, but it kind of like fits at the same time. Like that's how it felt. That it was just it was so early in that part of her character arc. It just didn't feel like it developed enough to make you really wonder what's going on. Like it almost felt like she's just going to roam the plains with our hunters and we'll never see her again now. But we'll see on that one. I honestly don't know like what it's all about. She's all at the same time is going to be at least an antagonist in series 2 as Ahsoka and Sabine try to get off and get back to their home galaxy. Like she's going to be the problem that they're facing until this like bigger problem materializes. And then maybe that's what brings them together. But yeah, it feels like in Star Wars way, feels almost inevitable that there'll be conflict and then she'll have a moment of realization and she'll see a new perspective or a new point of view, because it's all about point of views. And she's only like being brought up like her perspective of what the Jedi is and whatever she is and what, because we've never really had that explained as well. Like did Balin still see himself as a Jedi, or was he just a gun for hire or a lightsaber for hire? Like, but that's probably more true for her, who was raised outside of the Jedi Order by a former Jedi. At least he'd made peace with it, and she's still finding her way. But I honestly don't know. I would have liked just like a little bit more, and that's I think what led me to think, was that shot after? But I genuinely don't think there would have been enough time for them to like reshoot that and then re-render it, because like what he was it July or June that he died?
Yeah,
it wasn't a lot of time. So yeah, but yeah, we'll never know. And I didn't hear anything about it, but yeah.
Just to bring up something while we're talking about Balin and Shin, it's more of a timeline question. Maybe you guys can help me out with this. I'm honestly not sure, but I was under the impression it was a little bit after. So Balin says something interesting. I believe it's in like episode 3 or 4. And it's just the first time when he fights Ahsoka on top of that monument. And he says, everyone in the Order knew Anakin Skywalker. Few would live to see what he become. Now, obviously, that implies that he knows that he's Vader.
Yeah.
It was under my impression that not a lot of people knew who Vader was. Obviously, he hadn't met Thrawn yet, and Thrawn wouldn't tell him. But there is a point in the timeline where it comes out and it ruins Leia's political career, if I'm not mistaken. This doesn't sound like it's after that, because she's still the Minister of Defense. So I'm not. How does he know who Anakin became? I think that's got a bit of backstory there. Maybe like a bit of a Balin like pre-show or something.
I think the whole Balin story does, though, doesn't it? There were so many things around. Like he left the Order just before Order 66. Like why did he leave? What did he leave, or was he kind of cast out? Like how did he come across Shin? Because I don't think we got an age for Shin, but I assume she's about like mid to late teens, maybe.
She looks the same age, maybe a little bit younger than Sabine, I would say.
Yeah, I was the only thing I'm going off is the fact that she's still got like a Padawan braid. So like, and it doesn't really mean anything because we don't know like what he done. But I would say like late teens, maybe early 20s, maybe like Obi-Wan Phantom Menace at the oldest. And she looks young. So with that, it's very unlikely. In fact, that would be almost impossible that she was. In fact, it is impossible that she would be alive in the Jedi Order. So he must have found her at some point. But like that is a story. Like when did he find her? Did he seek her out? Did he just kind of come across her? Was she, a street orphan that he just sensed it and took her under his wing? Like there is that whole story. And then I think through that story is where we really see who Balin is, through his teachings to Shin. But yeah, again, that would make that should definitely be a comic for me. A comic.
Yeah, like the whole where Shin was asking questions about, well, not so much what was it like back then, and him having to sort of reminisce. This for me is confirming she was far too young to be in the Order. So I think at some point, because she was trained, because she said, because Balin even said, you were trained as a Bokken, like you, because.
Ezra,
Ezra, that was it. Ezra was trained as a Bokken Jedi, and she says, "Oh, like me." So she had zero training with the Jedi, as far as I'm concerned. And then getting on back to what you said about Balin, whether or not he knew Anakin and Vader were the same person, I don't think it's as much that. It's more like, oh, so he knew Vader so personally well that he could work it out, or was that effect? Because we do have characters that did figure it out and they did work closely with him, Tarkin, Thrawn as examples. But then you also had other people that had very little, if not zero, contact with Anakin, and they still figured it out that it was him. And we have what's his name? Theron Barr. He was an Iktokchi Jedi, and he just basically went Sherlock Holmes. He just got all of the evidence together and he just put them all, and he was like, yeah, that's him. So I better get his ass down here so I can try and do my best to get him gone. So there are ways in which people can find out. Is not heard of as much because it was a very closely guarded secret, and on public record they had Anakin die during the war. But after that, it all just came down to people just putting the pieces together eventually. And I feel like Balin was one of them, especially if he had some kind of a contact with Anakin. And we know he did, and he was roughly the same age as Anakin at that point. So it's not out of the stretch, I'd say.
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring it up because I'm on a perfect platform at the minute just to ask other like big Star Wars heads that question, because it bugged me a little bit. Like when I heard that line, I was like, if you would live to see what he became, he was like, wait, how did you know who he was?
I feel like that line is added for the fans to theorize so much, but I think we're like looking so in depth to that. I feel like it was more, not many people saw what he became, was to try and get an emotional dig at Ahsoka of like, hey, many people you spent time with Anakin, you were his Padawan. It's a shame you're one of the only people who survived that actually got to see where Anakin kind of became this powerhouse now of everything like that. And as rightfully Veritas said, they put him as dead in the war. So maybe Balin just assumes, oh, no, it's a shame no one really got to see what he became. Knew he was one of the strongest force wielders, but maybe even Balin thinks he's actually like Anakin's dead.
Oh,
I
okay, so
feel it's a good theory to say that it's more like a bluff, if anything, to try and get under his skin.
Like,
I think
it's a heat of battle type of things. Like people, like Sith have said these things in the past. Take Grievous as a perfect example. Grievous has thrown away multiple lines at people just to distract them, to kill them and take the lightsaber. He didn't care.
while that is true, you can never really. What's the phrase that they used to say? You can never really tell a good lie without a kernel of truth. And there's always something there that they'll just throw in to say, here's a little bit, but then I'm going to let you expand that on your own because your mind's going to play tricks on you. So it's a good thing to say, like, oh, Balin is going to say something, but I'm going to let this curdle with you, Ahsoka. Personally, I feel like because it's narratively, it makes more sense for him to be all like, I actually knew what happened to your master. He's a bit of a dick, wasn't he? What are you going to do about it? And just using all of that to get right under his skin. I feel like it's probably more appropriate that way, but it's good to think about with stuff like this. It really is.
It leans into what we were saying before, that it would, to carry on his story in like a comic book or a novel or whatever you're going to do, it would work perfectly. Similar to how we had that second Thrawn novel where it bounced from the past to the present, where he was working with Vader and he's working with Anakin.
Great book.
It's fantastic, but it's one of my favorite.
I just want to say on that book, we're finally getting a comic version of that book, and I can't wait for it.
Ooh, are we? Right, okay.
Yeah,
I'll buy all of it.
Yes, right. Well, this is what I'm saying. It worked perfectly as a comic or a novel where it would bounce back how Shin was getting trained by Balin when he first met her, to how he is like on the journey now after the events of Ahsoka, bouncing back and forth, kind of like how this show did with the Clone Wars when Ahsoka was completing the training. I think it would work really, really well into his story. Like it really, really would. And if they're gonna recast him, which I don't know if they should, like, you know, if the family's okay with it, then fine. But if they do, I think that would also work really well as a show.
Yeah,
maybe.
like a lot. I was saying do like a Rebels art style show for it. Like, obviously,
Tales of the Jedi would work.
Yeah. Like Ahsoka's been
Like
following this whole Rebel story. I feel like that art style would be perfect for it.
I'm just thinking with Tales of the Jedi as well. You could start with
100%.
like, you know, we saw Dooku leave the Order, so like you could almost do exactly the same with Balin, and we could see that as a flashback, and then move into his time on there.
If they had to recast an actor, by the way, because I have sat and thought of it, because you were saying you can't really think of someone. The only person that comes to mind is Sabretooth from the X-Men movies.
Schreiber.
It
it has been thrown out, and I think that like someone did a visual of that, and it does make sense. Again, we discussed this. My problem with that is the reason Balin works so well is because it's his adaptation of that character. The problem you then have is, especially with someone like Liev Schreiber or any big name, they then disregard that character. They don't work to like continue the character. They're all about the art and the performance. So I think if you recast them, actually you go for an unknown and you find the right person who can continue Balin as we started.
I'd rather the visual look. I'm going off visual look. I feel like
it's so tough.
He has that look.
It can only really work as a mimic character, though, like you said, because you are going to get your big actors that are going to go, well, this is how I do things. It's like, well, that's great. And that's why you're good in the movies and TV shows that you do. But we got this guy that did this performance that made this character the way that they are. If you start to be all like, well, I'm going to do it this way. I'm sorry, but Balin Skull doesn't have a fucking evil twin. So, like, you need to play him the way that Rey did. And if you can't, it's not going to work. It's as simple as that.
Just look at the guy who played the Grand Inquisitor in Kenobi. Now, fortunately, he didn't have a lot to do, but he insisted he was not going to go back and watch Rebels to just understand. He was like, look, this is what I'm just going to follow direction, and I'm a classically trained actor. But that's always a risk you run. But I think it's this trade-off, isn't it, about the paying homage and respect to both the character and the actor, but also it's a massive arc of like it could almost be whatever is going on over here could be the next generation of Star Wars trilogies. Like that could kick off ultimately when we get into Rey's New Order. That could be what the story is built around. You don't want to do that off screen because you don't want to lose people. Not everybody reads the books. Not everybody. So it's so tough. The thing is, we're speculating because we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
In Dave we trust, I suppose.
Yeah, in Dave we trust. Definitely.
Literally. Speaking of the ending of like certain people's stories and like the beginning, like, but if we're talking to season 2, if we're leaving it to the movie, I thought it was interesting the fact that Thrawn went straight to Dathomir. Now I know he's got an agreement with the High Mothers, or the Great Mothers, should I say? The High Mothers. I don't know what they've been smoking.
That green shit.
He walks in High Mothers. They're like,
yes, great green Kush.
Let's go to Dathomir, bro. I'm sorry. Right. Anyway, yeah, they go to Dathomir. I brought us a video a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about like Dathomir and the possibility of like resurrections and stuff like that. Do you guys think it's possible, or would you want to see the Night Sisters use their magic on, let's say, a Talzin, like give her a body to like go into? Would you like to see him resurrect like a Ventress, because obviously she's buried on Dathomir technically? Like would you like to see anything like that? I mean, I'm gonna get my answer out there. Personally, no, I wouldn't like that. Maybe a Talzin, not Ventress, but I would like to see something interesting in terms of like, why are they going there? Are they planning to use their magic to resurrect the Night Sisters that lived on that planet, just to like increase the number of their like army that they're building to take over the galaxy? I know that's a very open-ended question, but like, what do you guys think?
I'm not gonna lie, but a live-action Ventress with hair, zombie or not, does it for me. Like, even like, I hadn't considered it before then, but we saw the sarcophaguses. Sarcophaguses, or is it sarcophagi? I don't know. But they were all taken, so there is going to be an act of resurrection by the looks of it. Do they control it, or is it just everybody within this like beam of resurrection spell? And if Ventress happens to be in there, does she pop up? Is it, yeah, it would be quite cool, and they could make that make sense quite easy. Ventress as well is not originally a Filoni character, but obviously he did her best work, so it wouldn't be out the realms of possibility. I don't think it would be full resurrection. It would be just that weird Night Sister spirit thing.
Yes.
Yeah. This is what I'm talking about. I think if you're gonna resurrect a Ventress, it needs to be fully. It can't be. I don't want to see a zombie Ventress. I want to see her maybe like lead the army like the Grievous ran the droids, maybe like just like an underling, like to replace like a Morgan Elsbeth, maybe as like a second to the Great Mothers, like something like that. I don't want to see her as just a zombie. Like that would upset me. I'm not gonna lie.
I think the thing is, we don't know a lot about Night Witch magic, or Night Sister magic. So in one hand, there is possibilities, but they can't wander too far from what we've seen and experienced so far. So like a fully reanimated and alive Ventress would be like, there's also the other thing as well, that Ventress for a lot of people is still alive. Like, because if you haven't read the books, she just disappears.
Yeah.
So then, like, how do you rely on people telling the book or reading the books? It's a very un-Star Warsy thing, that where they kind of go into the books and then back. It's kind of like all that story's contained there, or it's contained here. So yeah, I suppose we'll see, won't we? It's one of those that could happen, but yeah, we'll see. But I hadn't considered it. But I'd love to see it.
we'll say there's so many possibilities. We talk about, is her name Merrin from Jedi Fallen Order? Like
Order, yeah.
she's obviously a Night Sister that is alive. I believe, like canon wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've not finished Survivor yet. I'm not gonna lie, fell off that. Like she's definitely a character that like some people go, oh, you're forgetting about Merrin. Like, you know, why are you not talking about, why are you talking about Ventress? Like, yeah, 100%. That'd be cool to see Merrin. You've also got to bring up the possibility of Maul. Obviously, he is from Dathomir. He's not on Dathomir, but you know, people like that. I think the most likely person is Talzin, if anyone is going to come back. For me, but it's difficult to see what Thrawn's endgame is for Dathomir. I don't know if he's going to turn on the Great Mothers or they're going to turn on him, but I don't think that alliance is going to last for very long. Once he gets back in with the Imperials, don't think that alliance is going to last for much longer.
I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. I still haven't been able to figure out which version of Thrawn we've got and what his ultimate motivation is. Like, is he getting back to our galaxy because it's closer to the Chase, or is it full heir to the Empire? Ultimately, it would appear Thrawn will do and align with whatever suits Thrawn and whatever his agenda is. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
So I was going to say, you bring up a great point there with like which Thrawn are we getting? Because I mean, I hope so, and I hope they haven't forgotten the Thrawn from the novels. I mean, I know not everyone reads them, but it's a big part of his story. Apart from Rebels, that's all we've got Thrawn-wise canon, and we've got a lot of information there. So, like in terms of which Thrawn we're getting, like it was throwing me off a little bit, where he said it more than once in the show, and he was like, for the Empire, for the glory of the Empire. You know, like sacrifice yourself for the Empire. That's why they did it for me. And I was like, yeah, you are in the Empire, but you know, you went there with an ulterior motive, so to speak. So I hope that doesn't get lost in like the canon that we're getting on the live TV shows.
Yeah, and it is a thing. Like, I suppose for him to get back to where he ultimately wants to be, the Empire is his best resource to do that, because I still believe he will look at it to think, well, actually, if he can take the Empire with him, that is the best defense he can provide to the Chiss. Now, to do that, does he have to fully reunite the Empire? And to fully reunite the Empire, does he have to overthrow and defeat the New Republic? So, if that's what it is and it's fully explained, I would love to see that. And to your point, I just hope it's not lost. But again, in Dave I trust, and especially when he brought Timothy Zahn onto the team to consult in like who is Thrawn. So yeah, it's just like, give me it now.
Yeah, I know. Like, I just want all the answers immediately, man.
The fact that we don't even know officially we're getting a second series.
Yeah,
We've got no idea when it could possibly be out. Like with Skeleton Crew now, like just up in the air, which seems to be the next series in this like anthology. We still just have no idea like what's happening next. And like, come on.
I know. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong as well. Isn't Skeleton Crew supposed to take place in that galaxy that we've just come from? Am I wrong there? Or
no clue.
Didn't they say the unknown regions or something like that? So it was like,
they like that. Yeah.
But yeah, we've got no clue.
There was also the other series that they're meant to be working, which is a more political
Acolyte.
style, where it's like a murder mystery between like several of the different Republicans and how the Empire starts like forming from the inside out again. And it's meant to follow like how the New Republic are trying to deal with it and finding people who are literally doing like double crossing work. And that's kind of just been like completely swept under the rug now. Like,
was that Rangers of the New Republic, or was that?
That's what they're meant to be building it around and everything. And like they announced it, they were like, "Oh, this is kind of in the works. We've got a plan," but they said nothing since. It's been like
it's a shame. It's because of the whole Gina Carano thing, right? It's true shame, true shame. Because Cara Dune, amazing character, could have been a great show. could have been a great lead for a show. That's never going to see the light of day, in my opinion. I don't think.
No.
Like one can dream, but I don't think that's ever going to see the light of day.
I also think, though, the fact that we will likely get to the end game of this Filoniverse, and nobody will ever sit and look there and think, we really could have done with that story to like that series to fill out the story. I think that kind of like sees that we're not going to miss it. It's a shame we didn't get it, but I think Marvel's a great example of this. Sometimes there is such a thing as too much.
Yeah.
So I'm not overly concerned by it. Like, pick your battles and select wisely. So
we've got a couple. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. We've got only 2 shows properly announced, right? We've got Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. They're the only ones I can think of, and then we've also got the movies.
The Rey Skywalker one where she builds the new Jedis. And then apparently they're doing an Old Republic one, like before anything, like literally how the Force came to be, and it was like the first users of it.
And then we're getting I don't know the order when they're coming out. We got the Filoni film coming out
and
as
then
well.
the Filoni movie whenever that.
Is Rogue Squadron still a thing?
See, this I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. We haven't really saw much of what's going on with that.
Like, I would like to think it would be, because that would be cool. I would love to see that 100%. But that's another thing that's just up in the air at the moment. We're not getting a lot of information from Disney. I think Kathleen Kennedy is like deleting a lot of ideas, like in and out of, like, some things are getting cancelled, some things are getting greenlit. Like it's really up in the air at the moment.
I do wonder though if like the end game timeline is the timeline that can't move, and with like writers and actor strikes, it's we're losing time towards that, and they don't want to push this too far back. So then it's like, okay, what can we shut down and essentially merge that part of the story into The Mandalorian or into Ahsoka, and we'll just tell it through that, so we can keep this like end game moment when we want to keep it. Because that's ultimately what we're shooting towards, isn't it?
Just to bring up the Rogue Squadron, I have just quickly done my research. It is no longer in the conversation to be the next Star Wars movie coming out. There is no like initial plan to bring it forward or carry on grabbing a director. And the original version, which was meant to be made by Patty Jenkins, has basically just been kept under wraps and stated she is no longer making the version of it.
That's a name. Yeah, it was wasn't it like quite deep into development, Rogue Squadron as a movie as well. Like, it's and then it got cancelled. Yeah, Patty Jenkins. I remember that coming up, but I didn't know if it had been greenlit again or anything. But
no, it's still like in a limbo state of like if it is going to be greenlit or not. It's quite
okay.
Yeah, I just read it on IMDb and IGN. They've both stated it's currently no conversations have gone forward with production or anything.
So right, okay, Jesus, right, yeah, that is just up in the air then. Okay, so bearing in mind that we're getting a Dave Filoni movie, like sort of an Heir to the Empire movie, which I'm assuming it is. Obviously, Thrawn is like the Thanos of this universe, endgame wise. I'm just going to ask all of you individually. I'll start from Ross, then we'll go to Liam, then we'll go to James. Like, it's like a double-ended question. Like,
God,
I love a double ender.
Oh, double-ended question.
Well, everyone loves Darth Maul.
So, would you like to see a season 2 of Ahsoka? If the answer is no, then no. But yes. And do you think it warrants another season before we get to the movie? And Ross, I'll ask you first.
Yes and yes. I'd love to see season 2 just to answer a bit more questions. I'd love to see the Mortis Gods involvement, especially with like Balin and what's going on there. It would feel a bit weird to go from this series knowing Ahsoka and Sabine have been training on this planet to then, oh, by the way, guys, here we are. We've just randomly appeared. Like, I don't want another Star Wars where it's like, and somehow this person returns. It's like, no. no. Give me context of how, because I find like the way they got to the planet, I found really interesting, a really unique take into Star Wars, and a lot of different unique like things added to the world and the universe. So do that again, add new ways they can find it. Because as I was saying to you, where I see this going is the world between worlds had gates shown in it. What's not to say Ahsoka and Sabine find a gate that is on that planet that links them to the world between worlds, and they do training within there as well.
Okay.
Multiple things that could happen with a season 2 to clear up a lot of the loose ends, tie some story ends, and then build to go to into a film of a big fight.
Okay. Liam?
Definitely more the story to be told around these characters. Does that have to be in an Ahsoka Series 2 specifically? Not necessarily, but it kind of would also make sense that it is. I'm not particularly bothered whether it is or it isn't, but yes, we want more. We need to tell more of the story. But like as Ross said there, you can't just have them like rocking up and be like, "Woohoo, we're back!" Like so.
Literally.
Yeah, it's just so. I think it absolutely. I think relevant to the movie, it feels like we've got a long way to go. We know Thrawn's dropped into Dathomir. Dathomir is in the Outer Rim. We know from the end of Mando season 3, Mando's essentially become like a ranger of the Outer Rim, chasing down Imperial remnants. So that's where he's like. They're all going to start coming back together pretty soon. I suppose again, it's like, what is the end game here? Only certain people know, and how much of a story is there to tell in that period. If it warrants a story, like another series, brilliant. Like it feels like it does, but actually, if we're very close to that culmination, then like let's get into the movie. So. Yeah, I mean, all the pieces are in place now, and other than Skeleton Crew, we don't know like what their involvement is, but like it almost feels like Boba Fett's on Tatooine, like he is who he is. He's the daimyo. He's got his rancor. He can ride his rancor. Like it almost feels like he's re-established. We know who Mando is. We know what he's doing. Like he's established now. He's got a reason to be out there. It's just that little bit with Ahsoka. But maybe they've got a way of telling that pretty quick. But to me, it feels like, again, going back to the Bale and stuff, there's a series worth of story to tell there before we get into a movie. But yeah, we'll see. That was definitely not a yes or no answer, by the way.
It was close. It was like, if you were playing football, you would have hit the post. So I'll let you off.
Inside of the post.
James, like, you gonna give me a yes or no answer there?
I feel it's worth it. I mean, it's very much on par with what Liam's saying. There are so many arcs that have yet to conclude, and I feel like those arcs are only going to be more appropriate to be told as an Ahsoka season 2 as it is to, I don't know if you want to call it Mando season 4 and goes, hey, what happened here? Oh, well, this happened. It just feels very cut away. It doesn't feel like much effort's been put in there. And I think that because they've started something, you kind of have to finish it in the appropriate manner. And I feel like Ahsoka is going to be that appropriate manner. So yeah, I feel like that's definitely in the works. And at the moment, even though they've not officially announced that there is going to be, I feel like there is a conversation that's going on at Disney HQ right now. They're all talking, well, this landed pretty fucking well. I think maybe we should continue that. Milk it, please. I want you to do it.
100%.
Do you see that? All the boys, James.
No, do you know what? I agree.
There's your clip.
Yeah, right. Definitely gonna put that on the I do want to say, and it goes all the way back to a point that I think it was Liam that said right at the start. It's kind of a shame that it has to be called Ahsoka or The Mandalorian or The Book of Boba Fett. I think right now, before the movie comes out, it would really benefit from, it's just called a series and all of these characters happen to be in them. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, apart from that, like, Ahsoka's difficult because she's on the complete other side of the galaxy. She's in a complete other galaxy. all of these people are relatively close to each other, and they all have similar goals, and they're all going to be hanging around each other, like outer rim, like style, like they're all like near each other. I think it would benefit from. I wouldn't say like a really quick fix for Ahsoka and Sabine, but I would like to see maybe a quicker fix than Disney used to giving us, because I do think like some shows suffer from, let's do 3 episodes of nothing, and then all of a sudden something happens in the last 2 episodes. That has happened before, and it's happened more than once for me.
Yeah.
I think there's an easy fix, and if Ahsoka and Sabine happen to find that world between worlds door, I mean, it could open up on Lothal, and all of a sudden, yay, you're back in the galaxy. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, because that I don't think that one was destroyed per se. I think the temple was like kind of like damaged, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you know, I think there's an easier fix than just, oh, we're gonna have to wait for a Star Whale to come around for the next 10 years, and like, you know, let's fly back to the galaxy. You know what I mean? I think there's an easier way to resolve it, but like carefully, so you don't just like rush it. There's a nice little in between that they can go with, but I think it does warrant one more season before the movie, just to wrap things up, so we're not spending 40 minutes of the film doing that. Does that make sense?
It does, and we do know that you look at like Ahsoka in The Mandalorian. No, actually, she wasn't even in The Mandalorian. She was in The Mandalorian story in Book of Boba Fett. So like, we know they're not worried about overlapping like stories from series, and it could well be that Ahsoka and Sabine escape that world could be in Skeleton Crew. Maybe that's why we've not seen anything about Skeleton Crew, because that's connection to it. So I suppose it'll all make sense when we get there, but yeah, I do wonder sometimes, like, are we, and the whole Sabine, I would have been more convinced if Sabine had either not tapped into the Force, and again, James and I were talking about this the other week, or if she'd had that moment where she was able to grip the saber, but then just lost it from there because she did that in like a moment of desperation that allowed her to dig in deep. But then I personally didn't like that she was just then like, Ezra, jump, I know how to do this now. I was a bit like, that was like a big leap, and especially a leap of confidence in herself. Yeah. So if we were to spend a second series where she's got that belief she can do it, but is also going through the frustration of like, why can't I do it like I did then? Like, I can't like tap, and that would make sense. That would certainly warrant more, like maybe not a full series, but certainly a couple of episodes of her going through that journey. But it now feels like Sabine's like, oh yeah, watch this, I can do this now and do this, and like, you know, so maybe they continue that story as part of a different series, but we literally could go either way.
Oh, 100%.
To touch on the Sabine Force sensitive thing, I wasn't incredibly happy about it, but I kind of got the direction of where they were going with it, because Ezra was like the driving force for her to kind of just like unlock that potential, because you started noticing it when the clones were rushing them down, and she literally went straight for the blasters and then perfectly blocked all the shots that were coming at her, knowing Ezra was the one that was in danger in that moment. And the line where they have with each other, where she goes, "What's your excuse?" And he was like, "Oh, like, you know, I've missed you." It isn't him just saying, "Oh, I've missed the banter me and you have." The whole reason he was struggling in that fight is because he's not needed the training. He's not needed to be in that intense of a situation and not use the Force. And that's kind of how it came for Sabine, is because she was put in extreme conditions. She's had to literally forget everything, clear her mind, and just be like, I need to do this for Ezra. And that's where it helped her. The balance for her was to make sure Ezra was safe.
Do you know what? This might be a controversial opinion. I really don't like the fact that Sabine can use the Force. I really don't like it. Like, I am of the opinion that not everyone has to be Force sensitive. I know George Lucas said that everyone is Force. Everyone can access the Force. I'm fine with that. I just don't think everyone has to be. Like, I think she was a perfectly competent Mandalorian warrior who can fight well with a lightsaber, not because she's force sensitive, because she's Mandalorian and like she is good with weapons. I thought that was good enough. I didn't really see the need in giving her like force abilities, like quite good ones as well. It feels a little bit tacked on for me. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion for like with all of you guys, but I just didn't think it was needed. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie.
Go on, James, because you've got a contrasting opinion on this.
I wouldn't necessarily believe it's controversial. It's a very divisive topic of conversation that I've seen. And yeah, you are right in what you're saying about how George and even Dave, respectively, have both weighed in on the fact that anybody, yes, can access the Force. And I think through time, it's been lost, forgotten, misinterpreted that of how the Force really works in people. So when we take someone like Sabine and we decide, okay, we're actually going to make her be one of those next to zero people that are not born Force sensitive, but make her use the Force. I do see some people say the exact same thing of why does everybody have to be Force sensitive? I have one question for those people, and who's everybody? Like, who are all these people coming forward saying I wasn't force sensitive before, but you know what? Now I am. But even if you did look at it that way, if you did find a few examples and said, yeah, but they weren't before, I'm like, well, Luke wasn't, if you want to think about it. He didn't figure it out till he was 19. Rey was the same way, sort of thing. She had like little whispers here and there when she was a little younger. She even felt it when Kylo had fallen to the dark side. So she had those things that she was kind of aware of but never knew what it was. Leia, she never really discovered it until her interactions with Luke. You can find a good few examples of people out there that
Anakin's another one. He never knew he was until literally spoke to Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon made it a lot more clearer.
Yeah, with Anakin, it's a bit more of a it's a bit more of like an instinct. He that's how he interprets it. He knows that there's something more about him. Because like he was almost kind of like bragging to Qui-Gon, saying, "Well, I'm the only human that can pod race." And it's like, to be fair, you probably are. Who's a non-Jedi at this stage. So it feels like it's more of a brag from a 9-year-old than anything else. And he just knows that it's like, you know what? I'm so shit hot. I'm going to tell this Jedi that I can do this thing that no one else can do. Yeah,
you could swing a sword, but man, I can race in this broken ass vehicle. Watch
but it's one of those things where it's like it's not so much of, well, why do you have to make everybody force sensitive? I would accept more of an argument of, but why do you have to turn her specifically into one? And you can open up a good conversation about that, because I did have my, not concerns, but I did think, where are you going with her character here when you start to play with the Force in her dynamic? It's always been loyalty to her people.
That was kind of more my beef, to be honest. I didn't know if I said it right. That was kind of more my problem. Like I said, she was Mandalorian. She was already good with weapons. Like she had her character established, and that bit there at the end just kind of felt a bit tacked on for me. Like,
what I tend to look at with those kind of things is, despite the fact that we had all of our seasons of Sabine, we've had a to and from. See, even at the end of Rebels, her arc never really closed. She had like her moment where she was stopping the machine that she built, that the Mandalorians were using for the Empire. So she had her moment there where it was taking responsibility, and that was a good character turn. And now it's more like, okay, so we're beyond our season now of Rebels. Now we're moving into Ahsoka, where we're opening a whole new chapter of Sabine and opening up more capabilities and hope, because again, this is what all Star Wars is built on hope, that we're building up more hope that people like Sabine can not so much change their nature, but expand upon it to become more of what they actually are. And that's what the Force is. You're opening yourself up to a wider, more bigger view. We actually had this, and I'm sorry if I'm going to go slightly off here. I've read a novel from a certain point of view, and it comes down to even one of the Ewoks. A shaman of the Ewok is ever so slightly Force sensitive, and they could sort of feel things. And one day the Ewok just decided, what am I hearing right now? What am I feeling right now? And he just decides to explore it. And rather than just looking at the trees, the bushes, the berries, the sticks, he sees more of the galaxy itself. He can feel it all around him. And it's just gone beyond his own comprehension that shit, there's actually so much more off this moon right now. There's loads out there that I didn't even know about. So when you take this concept and put it on Sabine, you've expanded, and it's more of a beginning at this stage. Like we've established, right, she can do this thing now. This is a brand new thing that Sabine can do. So we've only just seen the beginning of this. We don't know how it's going to conclude or how it's going to end. So if anything, I just see it as like a brand new story to tell of Sabine rather than changing her. You've expanded. That's kind of how I see it anyways.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. That's like what I was trying to say. I saw the direction they were going because it adds to like now the character depth of her and Ezra White opened her mind because she's now like, well, Ezra's calm in these scenarios, learned how to use it. I'm now also going to have to do this to make sure Ezra's safe. Also, the whole thing you guys were playing on Hope, this was playing on my mind for like really early on when you said this, Rhys. You know how you were saying like, oh, it's annoying that the series are all like tied into a character's name and everything like that. Why isn't like most of this like just one whole arc called like A New Heir? You know, like kind of like upon on how like A New Hope was made, A New Heir, because all of this is leading to a new heir to the Empire in Thrawn. And every single character and every single thing involving this has led to that. So you could call it, the arc of it is just a new heir, and then underneath it's that character's like perspective. So like,
I understand what you're saying.
Right, yeah. So you know like how Book of Boba Fett is called the Book of Boba Fett. You could have the whole of this like Filoni verse literally be called A New Heir, and then you could have had it of Book of this character, Book of that character, or you follow it from that way. Like
you could name it as like,
been literally being called Book of Rebels because it's
if you're saying it like that, you could like, for example, like use the username that you just said, A New Heir, Chapter 1, The Mandalorian.
Yeah, exactly like,
that.
You know, yeah, like you.
So it's more like a like MCU with Infinity Saga. Here's all of this under the Infinity Saga kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm with you.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens retrospectively. They're not giving it a name whilst because they don't want to give anything away.
Yeah, in case they release like a major series box set.
Yeah, because you think of the MCU, the problem is with the MCU, they based it all around the like active MCU, like in Marvel Comics. So like they just picked everything they wanted and made the MCU narrative. So people kind of knew what was coming anyway. Whereas with Star Wars, it's all, yes, they're taking hints and they're taking inspiration from certain parts, but on the most part, it is all brand new. So I feel like it's more we're kind of living in the moment with it, and that's the point. Is like you're with everything, you're like in that moment and you're like living it as in like with those characters rather than like as their perspective rather than like, oh, the story is told sort of thing. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if when it's all said and done, we start, especially with all the Star Wars content we're getting, it has its own like name, its own thing. Because I suppose what you've got is you've got the original trilogy, like that's what the originals, the prequels, the sequels, then obviously the two, you've got a load of series, but then this whole thing feels like something.
I like that. Yeah, I like if they're going to put it in a box like that, then like your phase ones, your phase twos, and stuff like. I'd quite like that because it'd feel even more organized and it'd feel like it was like all part of a grand plan. I think that'd be cool. Heading out of this series and moving forward, are there any? I'm going to once again individual. Are there any theories out that are going on out there at the moment, or even any that you can think of that you've not seen at the moment that either you like or you think could actually come to fruition? And seeing as though we started with Ross, I'll start with James on this side first.
Mix it up, you know.
It's going to be very disappointing, but I've not come up with any theories because I don't want to. I'd rather just go in blind and just be surprised with whatever Filoni or Favreau want to grace us with.
I like that.
And
I like that.
I generally haven't actually seen any theories because I'm not really looking for them. I've seen a couple of ideas that people have thrown around that obviously it goes back to the Abeloth theory that, you know, she'll somehow break free and then that will never ever be a topic of conversation in the sequels, because if such a big massive thing like that's going to happen, why is no one still talking about it to that day? So it's kind of one of those
100%.
things.
They would have to retcon the sequels if that was they would just have to, because they really would. Like if they brought Abeloth back, it literally, I wouldn't say it makes the sequels irrelevant, but it lowers the threat level.
It wouldn't make them irrelevant, so to speak. It's just if you start to introduce big events, then it becomes very unbelievable. Not on the sequel's point of view, but on, like, call it Ahsoka season 2's point of view, because it's like, oh, there's huge massive things happened where, you know, Abeloth is free, or Thrawn is ruling the whole galaxy for the next 10 years, and then everything goes back to normal. The New Republic comes back, and then no one's talking about that. They'd rather just go, well, the Jedi were a myth. Well, hang on, the Empire were in charge of it. Why aren't you talking about Thrawn? Why aren't you talking about Abeloth? You know what I mean? So it's like they've already bridged it to the sequels. Whether unfortunately people like it or not, it is leading there. We had it in Mandalorian with them teasing the origins of Snoke. We've had it with Luke building the temple that will eventually be destroyed by Kylo. It's there in the making. It's building towards it. So the tricky thing is this in-between moment between these 30 years, well, less than 30 years now, but you have to have some events go on, but not so big where it's going to be completely irrelevant by the time of the sequels. It has to be at least a topic of conversation. So I think Thrawn coming back is going to be a case of, well, he's probably only going to be around for about, I don't know, a month or two, and then all of a sudden he's gone. So it feels like, yeah, we'll bring back an amazing character, but he can't have too much of an impact because then it won't make sense a good couple of decades down the line. So it's this fine balance they have to really be delicate with.
100%. And you can also say that about your Luke Skywalkers as well, because if he comes back and has an impact on, let's say, the film, because I'm assuming they're going to try and bring him back for the film to take on the bigger baddie, which could be Thrawn, which could be whoever. In The Force Awakens, literally Rey says, Luke Skywalker, I thought he was a myth. I thought he was just a legend. Like, but if he has like a major impact on the galaxy, like 15 years before, then that wouldn't make much sense, would it? So that's difficult as well. It's
opened up a conversation. I mean, I remember someone asking a while ago about what did they ask? They asked, did the people believe Palpatine died on the Death Star, or did they really believe, or rather, do they actually know it was Vader that killed Palpatine? You know, because obviously, if you saw a huge explosion in the sky and you heard Palpatine was on there, you would just assume that's how he died. But people were more like, yeah, but did they know his apprentice threw him down the shaft? And I thought it's a very good question, and unfortunately, we don't know, but we can look ahead in time and maybe come up with some conclusions about that. And when you look at Rey, when she said, well, Luke comes from myth and legend, and she brought up the whole, yes, but you saw good in Vader, and that's what turned him. So she knows this story, but does she know this story as a fact? Does she know this because Han told her? Does she know this because Leia told her? Does she know this because Chewie told her? Or
exactly.
Did she get this from that being the whole myth and legend that was told to the galaxy to make him look like an amazing hero that's watching out for us and making sure that, you know, the Empire won't ever come back? Because how could they? There's hope out there. Luke Skywalker's there. So as long as he's out there, we've always got hope. So it comes back to one of those very delicate situations that Luke clearly has a big history, and I don't think his myth and legend just comes from that tale of defeating Vader. I think he's done more in this time that's added to this legend and added to this myth, but I don't feel he's done too much to be able to make such a huge impact that not a lot of people are talking about by the sequel era. Because remember, when you hear this guy took down Vader, you're going to come up with a whole bunch of stories where you can compare stuff to Greek mythology about the Hercules taking down the Hydra. We know the Hydra weren't fucking real, but hell, it was a great story. So let's talk about Luke Skywalker taking down a great big beast called Abeloth that was never real. So I've always been in the camp of, if you're going to bring in Abeloth, make her a nightmarish kid bedtime story only in that context. Like, she's not real, but she only exists as a myth, as a story only. And that's where Luke builds his legend, because people are sharing stories about him, whether they're a little bit true, a little bit of false, fairy tale, what have you.
Okay, I like. Yeah, do you know what? I can get down with that. I can get down with that. Like, it's sort of like the myth and legend of Luke Skywalker becomes like sort of like a safety blanket for the galaxy, I suppose. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. To be fair, Liam, have you heard any theories? Have you had any theories of your own that you want to share with us that you like?
I think the only kind of theory that I have is, I touched upon earlier, that what's going on in the other galaxy possibly leans towards like post the sequels, but like what James just said really lends to it that way, that for whatever reason it just doesn't materialize now, and it takes them longer to get to kind of our galaxy, and they become the new bad, because it feels like we need that, right? It's always been about the Jedi and the Sith. We need a different perspective. As for Thrawn, I totally agree. He kind of, like, the battle has to happen on Dathomir and probably no one else, because nobody's on Dathomir, so there isn't really much to know about it. And it has to be over pretty quick. And do you outcast him again? Does he go back to the chase, or is he just defeated? And I think he's that, although I love the character, and he's a very complex character, he's the sort of character that has to be defeated definitively. But yeah, I like, because there's the big question about, like, where's Ahsoka in, everybody feels like she has to die because we hear her in The Rise of Skywalker. Like, not necessarily, but probably, and all that, and she probably will die, because I always think good characters get a good death. But there's nothing to see that in whatever we get next of her and Sabine, that whatever they find, it is the big bad, and Ahsoka like basically sends Sabine back, like in a haste and panic battle, and Ahsoka stays behind to like basically close the door or close the gate and stop whatever it is getting through, which actually then might lead to Ahsoka popping up post sequel in the new kind of series, and very briefly. So all that is obviously absolute theory, but I think the one thing I would, if you would have asked me to put a bet on anything, I would say whatever it is in that space is more pointing towards what we're going to get in the new Rhea movie, and like whatever is like the story circulates around. But I also think we're just going to get a mad battle that's over pretty quick and has no real impact on the story and the galaxy.
Which is a true shame, in my opinion. I think it really is. I think in a way they've boxed themselves in, and it is a shame. I would quite like to see Thrawn maybe go back to the unknown regions and just call it a day. Like, it's not this galaxy. It's not going to provide any equipment, any backup, any support for the chase. Maybe there's another way, but like you say, I think he's probably going to be definitively defeated. But
it's interesting with Thrawn, though, because obviously with the Ascendancy trilogy, we see it through his eyes, and the Ascendancy is against him, and he's ultimately just trying to do what's right. You flip that around, though, and you tell that story from the Ascendancy's point of view. He's the madman, like, he's essentially the Palpatine of that, who goes beyond what anybody else is willing to do, and he's like, for the greater good, he's that person. So what we might, what could be a good way of doing that is, he's abolished, or he escapes our galaxy and gets back to the Chiss Ascendancy, and actually the Chiss Ascendancy have been able to overcome the Grisk themselves, and he comes back and is like, I'm here, like it's the last chance that he has, and then he realizes that actually they were right. Like his perspective and point of view is he was always the bad guy. He was always because he is. That's what he is. But yeah, I mean that's obviously just one of a million ways that this could go. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because I do think his story has to end now. Like it can't go on. But how do they do that? And I feel like he needs a very specific level of comeuppance, and just killing him isn't good enough, because he's the mastermind. He has to realize, like, the right level of defeat and comeuppance for Thrawn is to realize that he was wrong all the way from when he was in the chase ascendancy all the way through, that his path was the wrong path.
Let me
love that, Liam, as well. But I think, like, if he ends up going back, like, I just had a funny thought that if he goes back and he realizes General Bakiv has died, pretty much like the only person that knows that he was undercover, and it's like, oh, so you guys still want me to be exiled? Okay, cool, thanks. So, But it's like, the thing with Thrawn is, I think he's completely incapable of seeing himself as a bad guy. It's more like, you know, we're all morally sensitive. We all know every being in the universe knows what's good and what's bad. It's just, what are you doing about it? Are you wavering this side? Are you wavering that side? And what is your purpose? What is your intent for doing this one thing? That might be morally grey for someone else. So I think, like, because he was so completely blind to politics, like to the point of where it's just incomprehensible to him. He doesn't understand that, well, what I'm going to be doing here on a military level is going to impact these people on the political state. He's got no clue of that whatsoever. So when you apply that to, you do realize what you did wrong there, don't you, Thrawn? He goes, yeah, I defeated the enemy. Yeah, but like, you defeated the enemy, that's cool and all, but like, you do know who they were and what they mean to this family, don't you? No, not a clue. Right, there's a fucking problem, mate. You don't know the precautions. As like, you've not gone through this. You've not thought about this on that level. You're only one-sided. And I'll buy it. He's a genius for it, but that is his huge shortcomings. And it's one of those things where I don't think he'll ever recognize good and evil in himself. He only recognizes necessity. It's necessary to do this for my people. It's necessary to do that.
Here's something I'll post to you. And it's something that I've just thought of. And Ross, sorry, I will get to you in a second. But I've just thought of something like what you have just been talking about. Him, like, going back into exile, going back to the unknown regions. Is it possible that there's a way that he retreats by himself because somehow he finds out about Project Necromancer to bring the Emperor back? So he retreats until supposedly, because he thinks the Emperor's coming back. And obviously when Rey defeats the Emperor, obviously that plan's nixed. But then you've got Thrawn in, like, you know, he retreated himself. He's gone back to his known space with his part of the Empire. You've got the First Order there, which is like after Empire's End. Great book, by the way. Love it. That part of the Empire has gone into the unknown regions to create the first remnants of the First Order. But it's highly possible with the Imperial Council, like we saw in Mandalorian Season 3, that he finds out about Project Necromancer, because Captain Pelion is already talking to those people. Is it possible that he finds out about that and decides this isn't the best course of action yet? Maybe wait a decade or so, come back for the Empire. That makes sense. Like
it
I get where
does.
you're coming from.
It does, but it's not. We can only assume what Project Necromancer is because we all know what necromancy is. But we're only assuming what that is. They've never explicitly said what it is.
Yeah.
And we what we have to remember is Palpatine is alive during this period in another body. He's not just out there in the ether floating around in the clouds waiting for a body to be ready for him to inhabit. He instantly went from the Endor system all the way to Exegol. He's there already in his body.
Yeah,
but they just can't do anything with it. And I think Project Necromancy, to bring someone back from the dead, is, you know, what is loosely going to be interpreted as could be anything. Oh, well, Project Necromancy could be, let's raise the Empire from the dead, because they were born from the ashes of the Republic. So there's poetry to say that it was risen from the dead. They were destroyed. They were done for, but here we are again. It can mean anything. It can be interpreted anything. I think it's most likely the Emperor, but I don't know what that means to them. And I don't know how many people were aware that he is still alive at that stage, or alive to some degree. So it's
very
interesting
close
with what it is.
Yeah, it's a bit like Vader, right? Like, it's very close to the chest knowledge that only a few people would know about. I think Thrawn would be entrusted with that knowledge, seeing as though he was one of the Emperor. It's a bit like Tarkin, right? The Emperor trusted him quite a lot to deal with things in the Empire. I think if anyone was to know and anyone was to find out, it would be, I think Hux would probably inform him if it was something to do with the Emperor. But that's just a theory that I've just thought about there, like on the spot.
To be fair, I would ever so slightly disagree with you about Thrawn being in the know, because towards the end, especially in Treason, the Emperor was very on the fence about Thrawn. And before he went to the Battle of Lothal, the Emperor said to him, "You're going to deal with these rebels on Lothal, and then afterwards you're going to come to Coruscant, and you and I are going to have a very long conversation." And this was all about, obviously, Thrawn dealing with the Grisks using Empire resources and having the Chiss come into known space without Imperial permission. That made the Emperor think, I don't think you're 100% loyal to me anymore. And you know what the Emperor's like. He's more, well, what can you do to prove your worth? What can you do to prove your loyalty? And Thrawn his logic is sound in terms of, well, I'm playing both sides. I need the Empire to get rid of the Grisks, because if you don't, they're going to be a threat to us. So I'm kind of helping us both out to that degree. And I think the Emperor didn't see it the way he did. It's just more like, you're either helping me or you're not. Just choose a side, Thrawn, please, for the love of God.
Yeah, there's also with that as well, like in what's it called? The really bad Vader Emperor book, the one where they use 6s instead of 5s.
Oh,
what's it called? It's so unforgettable.
Sith Lords? What is it? Oh my God.
Lords of the Sith. That's
Lords of the Sith. Thank you. Yeah,
Lords of the Sith.
Yeah.
So in there, obviously, we see the Emperor several times where he's like, Vader, you're going to have to deal with this, because they can't see. Like, people, even his own people, didn't know the Emperor was a Sith, and that's very Sith-like what he was doing. But it's also, because I've just finished it, the like A New Hope certain point of view, and that is reiterated in there as well. Like, I can't do these things. I can, but I can't be seen doing them, because nobody knows I'm a Sith, even his own people. So I do think, I wonder if more necromancy could be more related to Snoke. It's just generally like the cloning stuff that's going on, but like, because it's the Sith Eternal who are essentially keeping Palpatine alive and do everything. And I still think there's loads of story to tell there. And I do wonder if that happens outside of this, that becomes its own thing. But I think what we're going to see more from the Imperial remnants is actually infighting. I think that's what we're going to see more of. Because we've already seen that, certainly with Moff Gideon, he was against Thrawn coming back, because he knew Thrawn was essentially higher ranking or next in line after the Emperor. But I think a lot of people will have that perspective as well now of like, well, I'm going to take over. So I think we'll get a bit more of that. But it could go either way. It could go infinite amount of ways.
100%. Ross, finally, let's get to you, dude. Sorry we left you like that.
No, it's all good. I was letting you guys carry on. It's very interesting to just listen to other people's theories. So, as you guys were saying about like the whole Abeloth myth thing, I feel like that is definitely where I kind of want this to go, because we also have to remember Thrawn was like a myth for how long, being trapped away on that planet with no way of getting back to it. So what's not to say Abeloth does get summoned, Ahsoka has a battle against Abeloth, and then that's where this kind of myth gets buried on that planet that's very forgettable there. But a lot of Abeloth now has kind of control of that planet and is trying to find a stronger way of breaking out, is what I would come to. And I feel like that'd be a really great way to show Ahsoka is a really strong character, keep to the continuity of the newer, like obviously the sequels that came out, where, you know, as you guys said, we don't want crazy overpowered characters involved, because why would they not talked about in the movies that were made? Especially like how you guys said with the Thrawn situation. Thrawn, I feel like in the show they've depicted him very different, and this is not a bashing on how he's wrote or anything like that. I only ever saw him as one step ahead in the show, where when he was in the novels and things like that, he was like 3-4 steps ahead every single time. I feel like with this type of Thrawn we're getting, as Liam rightfully put, he's just aligning with people to get the best interest in him. So for him, Dathomir now is the best alignment to suit him and the idea of the power of everyone he's getting. But once again, I think the sisters have a stronger motive to use Thrawn and the necromancy there. And I feel like they're going to start looking more at the sisters' magic and help that with the necromancy project slightly more as well.
Right, okay.
It will be interesting to see how the sisters play into it, because the Night Sisters and certainly Mother Talzin was one of the few people that like Palpatine and Dooku like actually feared, and you know, having 3 of the mothers there and essentially this army of the dead. Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see like who's using who, and at what point do they kind of does one become no longer a use to the other? I would say essentially the mothers can just drop Thrawn's army at any moment by withdrawing that magic, and then reincarnate or reanimate whoever's in the sarcophagus. I suppose we're assuming in the sarcophagus is either like their Night Sisters, or like from their tribe, or is it some of Thrawn's army, or is it something else? So I would probably guess that it's going to be Night Sisters, though, of some sort.
Also to add to that, I don't think the blade is going to get forgotten about. I have like a theory that potentially Shin might pick that up or do more with it, because it feels really ridiculous. She gets given that power, shows how incredible this sword is, to then it not come into the conversation after she lost it. And we didn't really see the sword get broken or destroyed properly.
We do love a bit of foreshadowing in Star Wars.
Part of me thinks Ahsoka might pick this up, because Ahsoka did have one of her blades breaking. Her lightsaber was destroyed in 2. So...
Oh, right, okay. I see where you're going with that. That could be interesting. I would like to see more of the Blade of Talzin, actually, yeah.
I just feel like you don't really reveal such an amazing, iconic weapon, especially for like Star Wars fans and for the novels and things like that, to be like, oh yeah, one person used it for like 2 episodes. Oh, they're dead now. That sword's gone forever. I'm sorry, it's literally a medieval blade that has the property of a lightsaber flame going around it. You can't not say that's badass.
Because was it destroyed on the fortress? Like she was killed in the fortress, but then the fortress was bombarded.
Yeah, but
so
it didn't really see it get destroyed. That's what I'm saying. There was never like an inkling. Was that blade ever really destroyed?
You know what it's going to be? You know what it's going to be? James is going to like this one, because I pulled loads of holes in it. It's going to be like the sword of Gryffindor that can be pulled from the Sorting Hat at any moment. They're now ripping off. So I made a comment in our conversation a couple of weeks ago that there were so many parallels to other fantasy universes. Ahsoka the White, essentially the Balrog.
Oh my god, I didn't even think about
the Balin scene at the end was very much like Mount Doom. It looked like he was looking at Mount Doom. And there was another one, which I can't remember what it was. James will know, but he'll not tell me because he doesn't want to empower my silly thoughts.
I'm trying to think, but I can't genuinely remember it.
Or it was so when the world between worlds that we saw, we debated like, was it actually the world between worlds, or was it just a manifestation of the Force for that vision? And I was like, it was the bloody room of requirement. That's what it was. The Force manifested it. So because Ahsoka required it through for that teaching, or Anakin required it for Ahsoka for her final lesson. And now there's another one. That sword, the sword of Talzin, is going to be the sword of Gryffindor that somebody just like pulls out in a moment of need.
No, because I sent Rhys this TikTok of a comedy sketch where someone turned around and said, J.K. Rowling didn't like come up with a unique idea.
Yeah.
She wrote Star Wars with crappy lightsabers. And now you just take all of this. I'm like, oh god, here we go.
In all seriousness, though, that sword reminds me of what we used to see, not even in the Old Republic, like thousands of years before that, before Force users knew how to make lightsabers, where the Sith would use like Sith alchemy on blades, and the actual Sith, the race of Sith, would use Sith alchemy to enchant blades, like to give them like extra power and stuff like that. It reminded me of that.
Definitely, yeah.
I do wonder with like this like origin film, are we going to see some of that? Like essentially, are the Night Sisters, like do the Night Sisters and the Sith and the Jedi and the Force, does it all have like a starting point that essentially they all branch off on and go off and do?
That would be cool. It would be so cool. I mean, I'm going deep into lore here. Didn't like King Adis, like the first Sith king, didn't he have like an enchanted alchemy blade or something? Like, does anyone know? Does anyone like do that?
Yeah, bro, that's you going like out of my wheelhouse.
Deep
like,
lore, dude. Yeah,
that's like well before anything I've even touched in Star Wars.
Oh yeah, he was like the first Sith king before they even started like becoming like, you know, lords and something. He was like king, and he had like before they even had lightsabers, before they even like exiled Jedi ever found like Malachor, he was like he united all the Sith tribes and became the first king. Yeah, that's how far I'm going back.
I need to find that because that sounds really cool. I like.
Oh, dude, it's amazing. He defeated the Rakatans. He was the first guy to defeat the Rakatan Empire. It was amazing. So
yeah, I feel like Ahsoka has been one of the most like talked about Star Wars series because of all these theories, all these ideas, and just like the direction of where a lot of things are going. And there is a lot of love for Ahsoka in many different people's opinions, like obviously Clone Wars and everything else she got like introduced through. I especially love getting to see Tales of the Jedi side of Ahsoka and seeing that training once again. I think that was very nice to just have that kind of history where this is how you got to it, to then see it play out in Clone Wars now as well. Where I think getting all that tie-in of Ahsoka was very crucial to get the idea of where she now is heading as well, because she's now accepted the fact of what she went through and how she was a soldier, but now she can kind of be that master to Sabine because she's done all her lessons.
Hell yeah.
And probably finished what she needed to do and let go.
Yeah, 100%. Like, do you know what? That's like the perfect thing to wrap up on that. I want to like ask you a question. Like, I know I'm full of questions today, but this is the thing is that we've been talking about it like all the way through this episode. We've been discussing it and stuff like that. Let's talk Tales of the Jedi, and let's talk potentially. I think it'd be cool Tales of the Sith. Give me a couple of episodes, or name me a person who you would like a Tales of the Jedi or Sith like to be written about. Obviously, we had Dooku for a little bit. We had Qui-Gon for the first like episode or so. We even like saw like a young Mace Windu like with Dooku before they became masters. Is there anyone in particular you would like to see a short Tales of the Jedi or Tales of the Sith of? Like, I'll start with Ross, seeing as though you have to wait for ages to answer your.
Grievous, 100% Grievous. I'd love to see.
Oh, when he was a Kaleesh warrior.
He is no Jedi or Sith, though.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'd love to see the tale of like how he aligned himself with everything going on with him.
Oh, so you want to see that on like an animation? Because obviously we've seen that in like a comic, haven't we? Like,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'd love to see like the Grievous comic like tale actually done in like the Tales of the Jedi style.
Okay. Do you know what? I'll give you that as a bonus. What about a Jedi or a Sith?
Oh, see, Jedi is really hard for me because there's like loads of love to have.
10,000 of them at one point, scattered across the galaxy.
We already kind of had like all the ones I wanted, so Jedi I can't really think of, and Dooku already had his. Maybe Ventress, I'd say. I'd give her kind of her style one.
I thought you were going to say you'd give her one. Yeah,
I'd give her one.
I mean, I'm with you there, Liam. I want, you know.
Ross is like, what? We're still talking about TV shows. I mean, what?
Yeah.
No, I think Ventress would be a good Sith story because I was like very old school Star Wars, like the old 2006 animated, and she was like one of the really coolest ones, whereas like Samurai Jack art style.
Yeah.
And she was like one of the most coolest like lightsaber wielders. So I'd love to see like her going through that training and how she became that apprentice.
Oh, dude, so much of her story, man. Like to the point, like she wasn't even a proper Sith apprentice, and she was able to take on Anakin and Obi-Wan at the same time. And
exactly, yeah. So
Like,
I'd love to see that like training and how she got to that point.
What would be cool with her is you could cross over as well because she was a Jedi. So you could do like Tales of the Jedi and then like how she then became, because she was a Padawan, wasn't she?
Yes,
and then
she was.
becomes, her master is killed and then she moves over. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Is that your answer, Liam, or have you got anything else?
No, so mine's like a reluctant one because it's Palpatine, but ultimately I want a Palpatine series book. Or like I want something like talk about movies. Nobody deserves an origin movie more than Palpatine because I want to see how he's recruited by Plagueis because he was destined for the dark side. He was never seduced. This is who he is. I want to see them recruit Maul. I want to see them tormenting Maul. I want to see him then like coercing Maul and getting Maul like basically recruiting him as his apprentice whilst Plagueis thinks that Maul is just an assassin. Essentially the Plagueis book, right? But I want to like that story, not specifically that book, but the story of Palpatine up to the Phantom Menace needs to be canonized. It needs to be told. We and like the whole Maul thing. Now, I think it should be in a lot bigger than a Tales of the Jedi or Tales of the Sith. But if we're not getting it, and that's the only way we get it, that would be the first one that I put on.
Hell yeah. No,
Jedi would be Quinlan Vos.
Yes. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I would love to see a Dark Disciple TV show. Quinlan Vos and Ventress. I think that would be a cool TV show.
Well, it was the next Clone Wars arc, wasn't it?
It was,
yeah. When would it have fit? Would it have been like part of what was originally going to be Series 7 before it was axed and then brought back?
No, I'm not 100% sure. I think there may have been plans for like a 7th and 8th season, maybe, because that would have slotted perfectly into like after Yoda meets up with the Wills, but before the events of the Siege of Mandalore, obviously because of Dooku. So maybe there should have been an extra season specifically for more of the dark side of us. Like you had the Savage Press and the Maul arc in, I believe it was season 4 or 5. Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, to be honest, I still don't think it's too late to have a Dark Disciple TV show, but you know, one can dream.
The only problem is with Star Wars is they don't like to tell a story here in this media that has already been told here. We know they'll
know.
tweak things. We saw
Yeah.
it with like Kanan's origin story. I think that basically pushed his it tweaked his story from his book, or was it a book or a comic book? It kind of broke that a little bit, but they didn't rewrite the whole thing, and they just will not like lift this and drop it there, which interestingly was one of the big questions that was asked with the Ahsoka Tales of the Jedi, because was the bit where she battles the Inquisitor, it's still an unanswered question. Was that the battle was that the Inquisitor that she battles in the Ahsoka novel? And that, if that is, and they've finally broke that, and they're now showing, animating or making live action things that are only in the written form, then that certainly opens up opportunities. But officially, they don't do that. So
I would certainly like to hope so. I mean, she killed him very similar to how she killed him in the book. So I hope that's the way. Like that's the same.
The problem is we don't have this like end view of how many Inquisitors there are or were, and who they all were. So like, there's no way of knowing for sure. Like she might have killed 10 of them as far as we know, but like we've just only seen a couple. So yeah, it's a bit of that, and like they love, and they do it on purpose because it just if they put a definitive like story or number or names around things, it's then restrictive. Whilst that's not the case, then they can do whatever they want and they can toy with us.
Yeah, it's that you just opened a whole gun more kind of worms in my head right there. I'm gonna have to think on that for a couple of days. Jesus. James, anything like Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Sith wise that you'd like to?
Yeah, on both sides, you can I agree with Liam. You can very easily do Quinlan Vos because he's going to be James Bond. You can just have an episode of him on a different mission. He was very an undercover Jedi as well, so that would be a very good sort of like a different sort of point of view as to how the Jedi don't always just operate out there in the known of, oh, he has a lightsaber, he's wearing robes, that's clearly a Jedi. He's undercover. He had to hide all of that. So it's be an interesting point of view. Despite you seeing a lot of him, you don't know a lot of him. It's Plo Koon. I really would like to see one with him and his master Tavoka, a Wookiee Jedi. You don't really see a lot of them around, so I think that'd be quite unique.
Surely is going to happen with like Tales of the Jedi being Filoni's baby.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah,
but we can only hope. Sith,
I am actually quite surprised you didn't see a Ki-Adi-Mundi, if I'm honest.
Ki-Adi-Mundi, that'd be a great one as well.
No, sorry.
James hates Ki-Adi-Mundi.
He
don't like Ki-Adi-Mundi. Oh,
nah, hey, despise him. He's just horrible, evil piece of shit. Anyways, Sith side of things, I thought we could like use that as a more of a generational thing. Whether you want to include Palpatine is one thing. You could have Palpatine's, origins. Then it could, quickly fast forward, 5 years. Here's the grand plan. Here's what I want to do. Fast forward another 5 years. Here's what I want to do. And then here we are, present time. I've just met Anakin. And then the next episode would be, right, well, now let's follow Plagueis's point of view. Starts him, fast forward a few years, I've just met Palpatine. Then we go back another generation, Tenebra, just met Plagueis, etc. And going all the way back through these generations. So I think, with the Sith, there's certainly a lot more to tell, because how many shows and movies can you say, this is about a villain? It's never about a villain. It's always about the good guys and what they're doing to stop the villain. So you never have a show about a villain. And I think it would be so good to get that. I mean, we have books about villains. We had a really good one about Rise of the Red Blade. That was a phenomenal book, told from the point of view of an Inquisitor that was once a Jedi. See the disillusionment from her point of view, and then her justifying why she's going to go bad. So you get those, but you never get to see it on the screen.
There are quite a lot of great books that could be turned into a TV show or movie. I would suggest one that I've only just read, which would make a pretty decent TV show in my opinion, and it's a Maul Lockdown. I don't know if you've ever read that one. And it's basically about Darth Maul being sent to find a weapons dealer in a prison by Palpatine. It's before the Phantom Menace, and Plagueis is still alive and aware of what's going on. But Maul basically has to go into this prison and not reveal that he's a Sith. So he has to make his way through, like, the workings of a prison. But all the while that's going on in this prison, there's like a gladiatorial thing going on where prisoners have to fight each other. But Maul has to not use the Force in this entire thing. It's really good. But it's a different side of Maul where he has to show his intelligence and his cunning to get through and survive. Very, very good. There's another
Maul,
really
the
good.
way of telling the Palpatine story is, like, especially in that format, like a Tales of the Jedi, is through Maul. Like, I still think if you're doing Palpatine, it should be a big project. But there's not really much more to tell about Maul. A Tales of the Sith of Maul in that would be, and who doesn't like Maul?
Exactly.
True.
I mean, I think there's a glaringly obvious movie, or even a trilogy of movies right there that should be made, and it's the Bane story.
Cad Bane.
No, Darth Bane, dude.
Okay, yeah.
Darth Bane. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong.
I
I'd love to
like
see
Cad Bane
it.
as well, though. I do like.
I do, yeah. Give me a Cad Bane movie. Screw it, I'll go see it.
Just give me a Bounty Hunters TV.
Well,
show.
a Jango Fett origin. So this is the other thing: is we need a Tales of the Bounty Hunters, and we get a Jango Fett origin story.
We're getting another comic of him, by the way.
Why comics?
Yeah,
like
Mace Windu's in there as well. We're getting a Mace Windu comic, so it's like I think they're like mini series, so it's not like a big thing, but yeah, they're coming.
It's still cool.
Hell yeah,
it is. But like, to my earlier point, if we're getting a comic, it massively reduces the chance that we'll get something on screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, oh no.
It's like Pick Your Poison. It's like, I'd love this on TV, but now a comic's done. That's it. We're not going to do more.
Yeah.
Plus, Tamara Morrison's getting on now, so it's going to be deep fake throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, but if you did it animation style, the voice actors are still around.
Oh, well, yeah, that would work.
Well, Tamara Morrison's a clone, so, just get his younger clone to do it. It's all good.
Yeah. Just get Dave Bradley Baker to do it. He just does them all when it comes to the voice. But yeah.
But right, yeah, like we've been talking for a while now, guys, and like we could literally go. I'd love to do another episode of this, honestly. If any of you guys host your own little live or anything or podcast, I'll definitely jump on and talk more about Star Wars. But we've been talking like for ages. We could go on forever about this. So we should probably wrap up before it goes on for another 3 hours because I need to be in Poland in about 8. So yeah. We'll be talking about this while I'm still on the plane. So oh, right. What a sick, absolutely amazing conversation that we've had tonight. Like we literally covered Ahsoka. We talked all about that, and then we've just gone on to like canon, legends, Thrawn, Bane, everything. Like literally everything has been covered. I love it. I love it when Star Wars conversations like this go like from like a certain conversation like all the way to like who'd have thought Ahsoka and Darth Tenebrous said we'd brought up in the same podcast. Certainly not me. Like, that's what warms my heart about the Star Wars community. But yeah, so before we wrap up, obviously, I want you to obviously plug yourself. Liam, starting with you because you're on my left to the left to the left.
What do you want to know?
Well, just plug yourself, man. Everywhere, where can we find you? What do you do? For people who don't know you, I know what you do. I like what you do. So
yeah, on TikTok and Instagram, Obi-Wan. What do I talk about? Like, I don't know. Like a gin. Every day is a new day at the minute. Some days are a non-day, but yeah, just come and check us out. Yeah, follow. Come and find out, and you tell me what I do because I'd like to know.
We'll let you know what you do in the comments.
Yeah.
We'll define it for you.
Well, you're doing your top 3 series at the moment. That's been really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I am, and actually, so the purpose behind that, a bit of insight, is TikTok recently changed their creator fund, where now if you choose to join, but eventually everybody will inevitably be pushed into it if you want to make money off it, where they only pay, but they pay better for videos over a minute. So I was like, oh, well, actually, let's use this to trial some videos between a minute and 90 seconds, which I've always kind of avoided. But like, let's give it a try. And essentially I'm like, yeah, like that's why I'm doing it. but I've been ill for the last week, so I'm a bit behind, and I haven't done one today. But yeah, I'll do a load at the weekend and catch up. But yeah,
Oh, keep
thanks
it
for the
up, though, man. Like consistency. Like you'll get some results from that for real. Like that sounds like obviously sounds interesting. I've seen that as well. It is interesting. Definitely go check that out. And Veritas, aka James, plug yourself. You are all over the place, my dude. Like I see your videos everywhere. Like all
Yeah.
over the channels.
bit of information. James is always plugged.
You heard it here first.
So I'm just primarily TikTok most of the time. I tend to just answer anybody's questions that's within canon universe. I'm not really behind the scenes. I don't know much about behind the scenes stuff and legends. That's very much of an Achilles heel of mine. Anything canon related, any topic, let me know. And I basically just either go to do research or just recap and remind myself about something that I've read beforehand or watched beforehand. But making waves on Instagram, trying to move a little bit more over there, get the following up on there. So it's all into Darth Veritas on both accounts. So that's where you can find me if you have a question.
Yeah, man. And your videos have been coming up on my For You page forever, man. Even before I started making my own content, like even on my wrestling channel, like everywhere.
Yeah, 2020 was the golden age of TikTok where everybody was growing, everybody had something going on, and like the algorithm was just amazing back then. It reminded me very much of how Vines were. It was very controlled chaos, where it was you had no idea what video you were gonna see next when you scroll up, but you knew it was gonna be golden. And it's always going to be something really random or really informative. And now it's just all business. And
it's all business. It's all just like what you're looking for. Like, no, you don't really get anything new unless you've got a wild for you face. But you know, right, guys. It's been an absolutely amazing conversation with you guys. Like I said, we'll definitely have to do this again because I've loved it. Make sure you check out all of these guys on all the platforms that they just said, specifically Instagram and TikTok and wherever else they follow. I'm sure it'll be in the bios. You obviously can follow Ross at Mugen Ross on Instagram and on TikTok. You can follow Outcasted LC in all of these places, including X and Twitter. We cover wrestling content, obviously, because like it's the most interesting thing in the world, apart from Star Wars, I suppose. And we also cover like pop culture episodes on the podcast because we just like to talk nonsense in all of our episodes. Why the hell not? Like I said, go follow, like if you like the video. If you don't like it anyway, because we can still be friends, don't worry. And subscribe to the channel. But for now, I hope you have an amazing weekend and the rest of your week. Peace out.